Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. It's a really nice day outside today, but I'm coming to you from indoors because I've got so much stuff to do inside. My big project this morning was working on my computer. For my video editing and most of the other work I do, I use an old Mac Pro A1289 computer. Getting to be an antique nowadays. Recently it's been kind of crashing on me and shutting down, so this morning I took it and I disassembled it and I cleaned everything out. That's a good thing about the old Mac Pros and the newest ones. You can kind of take them apart and do stuff to them and put them back together. So I cleaned it out and checked everything. It's a computer which I modified a lot. I put in upgraded processors and graphics card and a few other things like that, SSD and all that. Kind of a fun thing to work on. And it worked quite well for me for 2 or 3 years, and then recently it's been giving me these issues. So I got it all put back together and it seems to be working all right, and I'll know for sure that it's working all right once I edit the video that I'm making right now. I'm wearing my Yama Plus Niseko Mountain Brando t-shirt. I'm really looking forward to going skiing later this month, and it's going to be a lot of fun, I hope. I've been looking at the snow report every day and it looks really wonderful. I'll try to send some photos or some videos of what it's like up in Niseko this time of year. Maybe I'll be able to make a video while I'm up there. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the subject of today's video. Today I'm going to be talking about a Minolta camera, the Minolta SR-7, which was released in 1962. Now, the Minolta SR series was, of course, the first SLR camera which Minolta released, beginning with the SR2, and then after the SR2 came the SR1, kind of a weird thing, put 2 before 1. And there were several SR variations. The SR-7, which I'm holding right here, was a really big advance over the earlier cameras because it featured a built-in battery-powered light meter. And this camera has the distinction of being the very first SLR with an electric light meter. It's kind of a old school primitive kind of system, but it works, and back in 1962 it was a very cutting edge feature. Of course, after the SR-7 came more SR cameras like the SRT series, and the SR was just a really good camera. Minolta made zillions of them from the SR2 through the SRT-707 or whatever the last model happened to be. They were very well made, very rugged and reliable, and the lenses which came with them, the W Rocors, MC Rocors, were really good performers, and nowadays still easy to find and quite economical. This particular camera is probably different from the one you have if you happen to have one, because this one is painted black. Like the earlier cameras, Minolta made a limited version in black paint. Later versions it became more common. I don't come across a lot of these, though they're not very rare. I came across this one. I thought, wow, it's a really cool looking camera. I really like the black paint. They're not easy to come by, so I'll go ahead and grab it, and it'll be a good subject for video. And hopefully when I get this thing up and running in the next couple of weeks or later this month, I'll go ahead and list it for sale in my stores. So let's go ahead and take a look at this camera, and we'll go ahead and start from the top here. We have the film rewind knob and lever here. Very similar to the other SR cameras, are pretty much identical to those. What is different on this camera is this light meter readout here, and when you have a battery in the camera and you have the light meter turned on, and there's a switch on the bottom where you turn on the light meter, the needle in here will move and it will give you a reading, and you use this reading to set your shutter speed and aperture to get a correct exposure. You can adjust the film speed setting by lifting up the dial here and turning the knob, and I don't know if you can see it, but as I'm turning the knob, the numbers are moving back and forth here in the light meter readout. It's a very similar system to what they use in more modern cameras for setting the film speed, and we have a push button on the back here which changes to the other mode. So if you are shooting in places where there is lower light, such as indoors or whatever, this increases the sensitivity, and it will recommend the apertures you would use at that sensitivity. Moving on to the top here, we have this the pentaprism here, which has nothing on it. like the SR2 camera, which I recently reviewed, if you want to run a flash or accessory on this camera, you have to use the flash adapter. And this eyepiece here unscrews. You can remove it from the camera. You can put on the flash adapter and screw it back on. And here you have the flash sync sockets. Over to the right here, we have the shutter speed dial, and of course we have the film speed setting dial on the inside. The way this camera works is when you when you are turning the shutter speed dial, you will see the numbers moving back and forth here, and these are recommending, of course, aperture settings. So it's something kind of like an aperture priority kind of manual system. You select the shutter speed you like, and then the light meter will tell you which aperture to use at that particular shutter speed. It's a very good and simple system. Keep in mind that since the light meter is not within the lens here, if you're using a filter or something, you have to compensate for the loss of the light going through the lens. You know, what we call exposure compensation. When you are buying filters for these cameras, you can find used filters for next to nothing. They're all over the place, but if you're using colored filters, it's a good idea to get a new one because they include the card inside, which shows how much compensation you need when you're using that filter. If you're using a filter and you don't have the card, you'll probably just have to guess how much to compensate for the filter, so a new one is a better bet. Moving over here, we have the film winding and shutter charging lever. And I really like the system here where it wraps around the shutter release button. One of the things, the old Nikon cameras and certain other ones, they have a separate pivot for the winder and the shutter button is in a different location. That kind of makes for more, I don't know, complication on the top of the camera, more things to touch. I like this kind of system where it's all integrated together. It's very clean and it really simplifies the top of the camera and makes it look better, I think. Right here we have the film counter, which resets automatically when you open the film door. On the back here, I already mentioned the button here, which you use to increase the sensitivity of the light meter. Once again, here is the eyepiece, which can be threaded out. It's recessed all the way around, so you can attach a rubber eye cup to it. And there are also eyesight adjusting diopters, which Minolta made available for these cameras. These would be really hard to find nowadays. One thing I found is that you can adapt these adapters or these eyepieces from other cameras. Unfortunately, most of the ones which you will see will be kind of square for the rangefinder cameras. You can use the Nikon or Canon style ones for, say, the F-series cameras. The threads may not be the same, but I've seen people silicone these on the back of these eyepieces, and it works quite well. It holds it in place, and it doesn't glue it permanently, so you can remove it one day when you have to, and it actually works really well. Here we have the typical kind of reminder system on the back. When you put film in the camera, you would go ahead and you would adjust this dial to match whatever film speed you have loaded inside the camera. Once again, this is just a reminder and it doesn't affect the operation of the camera. If you have 400 speed film loaded in the camera, you would set the light meter for ISO 400, and then you would put this to 400, and that way you have two different ways to remind you what speed film you have. You can set this to any setting you want. It doesn't affect the operation of the camera, but this you must set the film speed here via the shutter speed dial to the correct setting, or your film won't be properly exposed, or at least the light meter won't work properly. If you have one of these cameras and the light meter doesn't work, it's a fully mechanical camera. It'll still work. The shutter mechanism will work properly. All you have to do is just use a handheld light meter or, say, a light meter app for your smartphone. On the bottom of the camera here, we have the release button, which you have to depress to unlock the winding mechanism and rewind the film. Here we have the battery cover, and you can kind of turn it off with your fingers here. It's knurled, so you can remove it with a finger, and it pops out like so. This camera was designed to use the MR9 or PX625 battery, which is no longer made. Those were mercury batteries. You can use an LR44 battery with an adapter. The reading in the light meter might be a little bit off, maybe as much as 2 stops off if you're using a 1.5 volt battery. You can use a wine cell battery. These are available on Etsy and eBay and a lot of other places. That will give you the correct voltage and the light meter will work properly. There are also adapters with a diode inside which will properly convert 1.5 volt LR44 batteries to use in this camera with the correct 1.3 volt output. And these cameras, sometimes these covers are corroded here, and there are a couple of holes here. These are vent holes to let out the gassing from the mercury batteries. You can also use a kind of spanner to grab a hold of these. What I tend to do if the battery cap is stuck on is I will just remove the screws and remove the bottom cover completely, and then I'll put some penetrating oil around on both sides and let it sit for a while, and then usually I can get them to come out without causing any damage. In the center here we have a standard 1/4-inch tripod socket, and over here we have the switch for turning off and on the light meter. Keep in mind that if you don't turn the light meter off, it will eventually drain the battery. Loading the film in the camera is quite simple. It has a very modern system, I guess the common modern system of pulling up on the rewind lever to release the film door. You simply leave it lifted up like that, drop in your film cartridge, pop it back down to hold the film cartridge in place, pull the film across, feed it into the film take-up spool here, and simply wind the shutter and to pull the film across until the holes on the top of the bottom of the film are being caught by the teeth on the take-up spool, and close it. So common weaknesses to this camera. The most common weakness to this camera is that the light meter doesn't work. That's usually due to corrosion damaging the electrical connections in the battery chamber. That's not especially easy to fix, though it's not really difficult. And as I said, the shutter in the camera usually works quite well. It's very reliable compared to other similar cameras, like the old Pentax cameras. The shutters tend to stick or not work at all, or the curtains can tend to break. The SR series is a little bit more reliable. Another thing I didn't mention here is the self-timer on the front, and then we have a mirror lockup system here. Minolta made a wide-angle lens, a 21mm lens if I remember right, and it's kind of the old-style lens where it puts the rear element kind of close to the film, so you have to lock up the mirror to do that, similar to the wide-angle lenses which Canon and Nikon made. Really good performers, really cool lenses, and if you can find one, you probably have a lot of fun shooting with it. Just remember that when the mirror is locked up, if you're using one of these lenses, you need to have the accessory finder. And in this case, to mount the accessory finder, you need the flash adapter to put the finder on the top. In the case of like Nikon camera, they don't have one on the top, so the viewfinder actually goes on the adapter on the flash shoe. It's a really cool lens, and you can use it on this camera. Anyway, that's about it. I think I've covered about everything here for the Minolta SR-7. As I said, I hope to have this thing up and going later this month and listed for sale. This one comes with this really cool 35mm f2.8 RAW lens. Good thing about these cameras is there are a lot of options available for the lenses. You can run, there are so many kinds between the wide-angle lens, which I mentioned, some of the later, let's say, MC RAW fisheye lenses, and of course all the later standard wide-angle telephoto lenses or whatever. Really good to mount on this camera. Anyway, I'll be making more videos shortly. Hopefully my computer will be working properly when I try to edit this video, and I'll try to make at least 1 or 2 more videos before we leave for Hokkaido, and with any luck I'll be able to make a video while I'm up there and kind of share what it's like while we're up there. If you'd like to see these, please subscribe. Clicking the like button helps. It gets more people interested in this channel and hopefully getting interested in vintage cameras and film photography. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.